He promised to hold me forever, but broke me piece by piece when I needed him most. Left me lost and alone in the darkest night. But when I ignited my soul's fire, I became the nightmare he never saw coming. He promised me forever. I believed every word. When he held me close, whispered sweet things in my ear, I thought I had found my safe place. The one person in the world who would never let me fall. The one who would stand by me, no matter what storms came our way. But I was wrong. When I needed him most, when my world started crumbling and the darkness crept in, he broke me. Not all at once, no. Piece by piece. Like a master artist destroying his own creation. Every promise, every vow turned to ash in my hands. He became a stranger, cold and distant, leaving me to drown in the silence of his absence. The nights were the hardest. Lying awake, heart pounding, wondering what I had done wrong. Why someone who claimed to love me could turn into my worst nightmare. The emptiness in my chest grew heavier every day, crushing me slowly. It felt like the darkness would swallow me whole. I felt so alone. But even in that darkness, something inside me flickered. A tiny spark. A fire I didn't know I had. I realized then that pain could either destroy me or fuel me. I chose to be fueled. He thought he could break me forever, but what he didn't understand was that a broken heart can still burn with fury. And that fury would become my power. I started to pick up the pieces of myself, not the fragile shards he left behind, but something stronger. Hardened by betrayal, sharpened by the sting of his lies. Every tear I shed was like gasoline on my fire. And slowly, I rebuilt myself. I wasn't the same girl who had trusted him blindly. I was someone new, someone dangerous. He left me lost and alone in the darkest night, but I refused to stay in that darkness. I trained myself to survive, to thrive. I learned to hide my pain behind a mask of calm, to smile when I felt like screaming inside. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me up, who reminded me of my worth when I forgot. And while he was living his life, thinking I was broken beyond repair, I was preparing. Preparing to rise. Preparing to make him feel the weight of what he did to me. The night he left me was the night I promised myself I would never be powerless again. He made a grave mistake, underestimating the strength of someone he thought he could break. Because sometimes, the person you hurt the most comes back as the nightmare you never expected. And that nightmare is me. The days after he left were the hardest. I wandered through the world like a ghost, someone who looked alive but was empty inside. Every familiar place reminded me of him. Every song, every scent, every street corner was a memory of what we used to be. People around me said I should move on. That time would heal everything. But healing wasn't easy when the wounds were carved by the one you trusted most. I replayed everything in my mind, the moments when he held me, the promises he made, the way his eyes seemed so sincere. How quickly it all turned into lies and pain. But slowly, something inside me shifted. I realized the weakness was not mine. It was his. He was weak enough to destroy something pure. Weak enough to let go of someone who loved him fiercely. I refused to be the victim in his story. So, I started to fight back. Not with anger or screams. No, I fought with patience, with silence, with the coldness that he never thought I could carry. I rebuilt my life piece by piece. Each new day was a small victory, waking up without crying, smiling without forcing it, breathing without feeling suffocated by memories. And all the while, I planned. I planned to show him that the girl he thought he'd broken was still here, stronger, wiser, and ready. Ready to become the storm that would shake his world. He thought he left me in the dark, but I learned to navigate the shadows. I found power in the silence. I became someone he would never recognize, someone he would fear. Because the most dangerous kind of revenge isn't loud or violent. It's the quiet kind, the kind that destroys from within, slowly, without mercy. I was no longer the broken girl. I was the nightmare he never saw coming. He never noticed the change in me at first. To the world, I was still the quiet girl, the one who looked fragile and lost. But behind my calm exterior, I was sharpening my mind and my heart like a blade. I watched him from a distance, seeing how his life carried on as if I never existed. The careless way he smiled, the way he moved on without a second thought, made my blood boil. How could he be so cold? So heartless? But I didn't let that anger consume me. Instead, I let it fuel my purpose. Every day, I reminded myself that I wasn't here to cry over him anymore. I was here to rise. I started to rebuild my dreams, once he had tried to crush. I found new passions, new friends who valued me, and a strength I never knew I had. The broken pieces of me were now stepping stones, each one helping me climb higher. And then, I began to plan. Not out of spite, not out of hatred, but because I deserved justice. Because he needed to feel what it was like to lose someone who had once been his whole world. I wanted him to understand the pain he left behind, the emptiness he created, the trust he shattered. But I wasn't going to stoop to his level. I was going to be better, smarter, more powerful. I learned to play his game, but on my own terms. I learned his weaknesses, his secrets, the cracks in his perfect facade. And I waited for the perfect moment, the moment when I could show him that breaking me only made me stronger. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't just about making someone pay. It's about reclaiming your own power. And that's exactly what I was going to do. By the time I started my revenge, I wasn't the same girl he thought he could break. The pain he left inside me had shaped me, but it didn't define me. I was a force, a storm that had been quietly building, waiting to roar. I didn't want his pity. I didn't want his apologies, empty and meaningless. I wanted him to understand what he had lost. I wanted him to feel the weight of every lie, every broken promise, every moment he shattered my trust. The plan wasn't simple. It took time, patience. Every move had to be calculated, precise. I watched him like a hawk, learning his routines, his weaknesses, the people he trusted. He was careless, arrogant, thinking he was untouchable. That made my task easier. I started with the small things. I let rumors spread, whispered truths mixed with lies. I watched as his reputation began to crack, as friends questioned his loyalty, as colleagues started to distance themselves. The man who once seemed so powerful began to feel the cold shadow of doubt creeping in. But it wasn't enough. No, I needed to hit him where it hurt most, his pride. He had always prided himself on control, over me, over his life, over everything. So I took control of his world instead. I found his secrets, the ones he buried deep, the ones he thought no one could ever uncover. I held those secrets like weapons, sharp and ready. And then, I started to pull the strings. I made sure the people he trusted most saw the truth. I made sure his carefully crafted lies unraveled, thread by thread. He was exposed, vulnerable, stripped of his facade. But I didn't stop there. I reminded him of what he had lost, the love he thought was his forever, the woman he destroyed without a second thought. Every message, every glance, every moment I confronted him was a mirror showing him the wreckage he caused. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just stood there, calm and cold, letting the weight of his actions crush him. It was a slow, deliberate destruction. The kind that hurts more because it's quiet and relentless. The kind that leaves scars invisible to the world but unforgettable to the soul. And through it all, I kept my fire burning. Because this was my moment. My victory. Not because I wanted to destroy him, but because I wanted to reclaim myself. I wanted to prove that no matter how broken I was, I could rise. That no matter how deep the darkness, there was always a spark waiting to become a flame. And I was that flame. The nightmare he never saw coming. He looked at me once, eyes wide with shock, as if realizing too late that the girl he thought he could crush had become his reckoning. That moment, his disbelief, his fear, that was my sweetest revenge. Because sometimes, the person you break is the one who ends up breaking you. But I wasn't broken anymore. I was free. And I would never let anyone take that away from me again. The more he realized he was losing control, the more desperate he became. I could see it in his eyes, the flicker of panic beneath his arrogance. The same man who once held my heart like it was the most precious thing suddenly looked like a stranger, stripped of power and pride. But this was just the beginning. I didn't want to just watch him fall. I wanted him to understand every inch of the pain he caused. The sleepless nights. The tears no one saw. The hope that died with every lie he whispered. Revenge isn't just about payback, it's about justice for the soul. I found his weaknesses, the parts of his life he kept hidden, the secrets he thought were buried deep enough to never resurface. And I held them close like daggers, ready to strike when the time was right. I started small, sending messages to those he cared about, planting seeds of doubt that grew into a wildfire. Friends who once smiled at him with loyalty in their eyes now glanced with suspicion and fear. His carefully built world was crumbling, piece by piece. But he still didn't see me coming. I moved in silence, like a shadow he couldn't catch. Every step I took was calculated, every word measured. I was no longer the girl who begged for love. I was a woman on a mission. One evening, I watched from a distance as he sat in a crowded room, surrounded by people who barely hid their contempt. He was alone, isolated by his own lies and betrayals. I felt no joy in his downfall, only cold satisfaction. Because I knew what true victory meant. It meant rising above the pain, not sinking into it. It meant taking back your life, piece by piece, no matter how broken you once were. And so, I prepared for the final act. The moment when he would face me, the real me. The woman he never wanted to see. When that day came, I was ready. I didn't storm in with fury or tears. I walked in with calm determination, eyes steady, heart unbreakable. He looked at me, confusion twisting his features. For a moment, I saw a flicker of fear, the realization that he had underestimated me. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice trembling. I smiled, but it wasn't the smile of the girl he once knew. It was colder, sharper, the smile of someone who had reclaimed her power. "I'm here to show you what you lost," I said softly. "To remind you that the girl you thought you broke is still standing. Stronger than ever." His face paled, and for the first time, I saw him afraid. Because the woman standing before him wasn't the broken girl he left behind. She was a force of nature. And he was about to learn that some fires don't burn out, they only grow stronger. The moment I faced him, everything changed. The years of silence, the endless nights spent questioning my worth, all of it came rushing back, but this time, I wasn't overwhelmed by pain. I was fueled by it, transformed because of it. He stared at me, eyes searching mine, trying to find the girl he once knew. But all he found was a stranger, a woman who had rebuilt herself from the ruins he left behind. "You don't recognize me, do you?" I said quietly. "That's because I'm not the girl you broke. I'm the one you created. The one you tried to erase, but failed." His jaw tightened. His confident facade cracked for a fraction of a second, and that was all the opening I needed. I had planned this moment meticulously. Every word, every glance, every detail was designed to remind him of his own cruelty. I wasn't here to beg for answers or forgiveness. I was here to reclaim my dignity. "You left me alone when I needed you most," I said, my voice steady but cold. "You promised to hold me forever, but you broke me piece by piece. And you walked away without a second thought." His eyes flickered with guilt, or was it fear? But he said nothing. Because deep down, he knew he was the villain in this story. But I wasn't finished. I leaned in, close enough so he could see the fire in my eyes. "Do you know what happens when someone like me breaks?" I whispered. "We don't disappear. We don't crumble into dust. We burn. We rise. And we become the nightmare you never expected." He swallowed hard, unable to meet my gaze. I pulled back, my voice sharper now. "I spent years picking up the pieces of my shattered heart. I rebuilt myself, stronger than ever. And now, I'm here to show you what it means to lose something real. To lose someone who gave you everything." I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. That's when I knew my plan was working. But this wasn't just about him. It was about me. About every tear I cried when I thought no one was watching. Every moment I felt worthless and alone. Every second I spent wondering if I would ever be whole again. I wasn't just seeking revenge. I was seeking closure, justice, redemption. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is living well. And that's exactly what I was going to do. Over the next few weeks, I watched him unravel. His world turned upside down, piece by piece, as everything he built on lies began to collapse. The secrets I uncovered, the truths I revealed, tore through his life like wildfire. But the most satisfying part wasn't watching him fall. It was knowing I was free. Free from his shadow. Free from the pain he caused. Free to live my life on my own terms. He thought he broke me forever. But he didn't know that breaking me only made me stronger. And as I walked away from the wreckage of our past, I realized something profound. The girl who once begged for his love was gone. In her place stood a woman who didn't need anyone else to feel whole. A woman who had turned her pain into power. A woman who would never let anyone break her again. Because sometimes, the deepest wounds give birth to the fiercest strength. And that strength was mine. The final act wasn't just about him, it was about me. It was about taking back everything he tried to steal. My dignity, my strength, my soul. He thought I was broken beyond repair. That I'd crumble silently, fade into nothingness. But he was wrong. Because while he was busy destroying me, I was quietly becoming someone unstoppable. The day I confronted him for the last time, I wasn't the girl he once knew. I was a storm wrapped in calm, a force he never expected. I walked into the room where he waited, his eyes flickering with a mixture of disbelief and regret. I could see it, the realization that the woman before him was not his victim anymore. I took a deep breath and looked him straight in the eyes. "Do you remember all the promises you made?" I asked, voice steady. "The words you said when you held me close, when you swore you'd never leave?" He nodded slowly, unable to speak. "Well," I said, "those promises meant nothing to you. But they meant everything to me. And I kept them for myself." He blinked, confused. "I promised myself that I would survive. That I would rise from the ashes you left behind. That I would become someone you could never break." And then I told him everything. Every secret I uncovered. Every truth I exposed. The lies he built his life on began to crumble right in front of him. His pride shattered. His world collapsed. But the greatest shock was yet to come. Because after all this, after the pain, the lies, the betrayal, he still didn't understand. He still thought I was the one who lost. I smiled, cold and sure. Because you see, I didn't just survive. I thrived. I built a life so full, so real, that there's no space for the darkness you left behind. He looked like he wanted to argue, but I stopped him. "Here's the truth you never saw coming," I whispered. "The real pain isn't from losing me. It's from knowing you lost someone who will never be yours again." And then, the twist. I reached into my pocket and pulled out something he never expected, a folder filled with proof. Proof of everything he tried to hide. Proof that would destroy him completely, not just in public, but in every corner of his carefully guarded life. He looked at the folder, eyes wide with panic. "Well, why?" he whispered. "Why are you doing this?" I smiled, no longer the girl who begged for love, but a woman who had taken back her power. "Because you used my pain to break me," I said softly, "but I'm going to use it to make sure you never heal." He realized, too late, that the game had changed. That the girl he thought he could break was the one who held all the cards. And as I walked away from him, I knew this was more than revenge. It was justice. It was closure. It was my rebirth. Because sometimes, the deepest wounds don't just heal, they transform us into something stronger than we ever imagined. And that strength? It's the greatest revenge of all.